Hello. You're probably wondering what dear Percy is doing here. When I came to record this video for you all, guess who was on my desk? Me. So, his punishment, he's gonna be in the video for now. This is Percy though. Say hi, guys. Can you say hi to my students, or you can be shy? Okay, I'm Percy. Purrcy. That might be important later. Say bye. Okay, bye. Bye. Yes, I'm a crazy cat lady. You should keep in mind, he's orange and has white on him, and he's mad at me. Okay, down to business. So, I've been gone. I'm not gone now, but I've been gone when you're watching this now. So, you guys should have watched Blackfish on Monday and Tuesday. And if you didn't get to do that, hopefully you have Netflix because you can get it there, or you can go talk to the library. They can help you find a copy to rent. Last time I checked, they did not have one on hand, but they can help you find one. So hopefully by now you guys have either started working on the discussion board, or you will be doing that now, sometime today or tomorrow, whatever. After you watch this lecture, make sure you take the quiz that goes with this. It's basically my way of knowing that you actually watched the whole thing. So it's like attending class. And then hopefully you guys are also working on your special occasion speeches that we should have talked about on Thursday. Sorry, it's weird because this is Tuesday and I'm trying to talk about the past, and it's not actually the past, but hopefully you are working on those. If you do have questions about it, please email me. I am gone, obviously, but I'm going to be by my phone, not at all times, so give me a decent amount of time, but I will check it at least once a day. Just be aware that I am going to be, or that while you're watching this, I am in a different time zone. So if you do have questions and you want an answer that very same day, you should probably not wait until after 11 o'clock at night. I might even, to be safe, say 10 o'clock at night, because if it's 11 o'clock for you, it's going to be midnight for me, and I gotta be honest, I don't really make it past midnight very often, so I might not get your email until the next day. So keep that in mind if you are looking for feedback from me or you need a very quick answer. Don't forget about your listening assignment, because when we come back, you're not going to have very long to do that. It is going to be due it is due July 30th. So you should do that. Also, your speeches are going to start. We're going to go reverse alphabetical order. I will post the official speech order on Desire to Learn, which you should be able to access, because to get this video, you had to get on Desire to Learn. So you can't tell me that you didn't know when you were going, which is very, very helpful for me. Also, you guys should review for your exam, because that is July 31st. And again, you should have the review sheet, because I should be giving it to you, or I should have given it to you on Thursday. Again, it's weird because it's Tuesday for me, and I'm talking about the past, which isn't actually the past. So start reviewing, but we will have a review day on the 30th. So the 28th, we will do speeches. The 29th, we'll do speeches. The 30th, we will finish up any speeches that for some reason didn't get done. If you guys go over time, and then we'll review for the final, and then on July 31st you'll have your final exam, and that's it. That's a semester. So right now I'm getting ready to go over chapter 16. Is about special occasion speaking, or ceremonial speaking. I hope that you don't get too terribly bored, but again, do pay attention, please. There's a quiz, and I will see you guys on Monday. I hope that whatever day you're watching this is a wonderful day. You guys have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend. So keep up the good work. So today we're going to go over chapter 16, like I said, which is about ceremonial speaking or special occasion speaking. We are going to cover the different types of ceremonial speeches, and then we will also talk about some different techniques. Alright, so we're going to talk about some techniques for ceremonial speaking first. The first technique is identification, and this is something that you all should be familiar with in that we've talked about it quite a lot. And just as a reminder, this is the feeling of closeness between you and your audience members. And in terms of ceremonial speaking, there's a few different ways you can go about creating a sense of identification, but the way that you choose to go about doing this is going to depend on, what type of special occasion speech you're doing. It's going to depend on, just any number of factors, who's in your audience, what your goals are, etc. But the three most common ways that you can create a sense of identification is through the use of narrative, the recognition of heroes and heroines, or through the renewal of group commitment. Narratives are very helpful if you, they're my personal favorite, and I think they're easier to do, and it's kind of, you don't have to necessarily tell a story that involves everybody, but it's going to be a story that kind of talks about maybe who the person is, and in some way the people in your audience might have a similar memory. And this is because, for example, I had to deliver a eulogy for my grandma, and I used a narrative, and I didn't know half the people in the room, but the stories that I chose to tell allowed them to still connect with me because I included things about my grandma that they still knew about. So, things like her baking, and, she was famous for her angel food cake, and, just the kind of person she was. And so these are just all things that kind of helped me connect to the people in the room that I did not necessarily know, but knew my grandma really well. Now, you can also kind of call out different heroes or heroines, and these are usually going to be famous people, like Martin Luther King Jr., Elizabeth Cady Stanton. A lot of people will use JFK, and the place you're going to notice this most often is in political speeches. It's something that they do quite frequently because these people are highly admired, and it creates the sense of identification. And then the last thing you can do is the renewal of group commitment. And essentially, you just call upon people to, continue doing what they're doing or shoot for a higher goal, and just ask them to commit or to recommit. And that's essentially what that is. Now, in terms of magnification, essentially what you do is you do what I refer to as like selecting themes. And that's kind of how you go about developing this. And a lot of common themes that people draw on for this purpose are things like hard work, overcoming obstacles, how much a person benefited society, and this is just something that you can kind of use in combination with identification. I personally like them that way. I think that if you can combine narrative with various themes, it's helpful. But, none of these speeches are really concrete in the way that they are supposed to be. There are guidelines, but there's not necessarily, you know, you have to do this, this, and this, and this. You know, they're not as in one box as the other speeches. So the way that you go about developing these things are going to depend, again, on the type of speech and what your purpose is. So these are the types of special occasion speeches or ceremonial speeches, whichever you want to call them, that do exist. There are speeches of tribute, and depending on the time, situation, it's either going to be a eulogy, it could be a toast, it could be a award presentation, and that's typically paired with an acceptance speech. There are also speeches of inspiration, your acceptance speech, and there are also speeches of introduction and after dinner speeches. I am not going to cover these, but you should know that they do exist in case you ever do run into a situation where you have to deliver one of these. It's not one of the options available to you for the assignment, so I just want to focus on the tribute, the inspiration, and the acceptance speech. So if you would like more information about the speech of introduction or the after dinner speech, consult your textbook. Ask me any questions if you do have them, though. Okay, so a speech of tribute is a speech that either recognizes the achievements of an individual or a group. Sometimes it commemorates a special event. Now, when I start talking about guidelines for all of these speeches, like I said before, these speeches are not as concrete in terms of structure. So, yes, there are guidelines, but you can kind of think outside the box a little bit for these. And, you know, how you go about doing it and the way that you follow the guidelines is really going to depend on what your purpose is, who your audience is, and various other factors like that. So for this particular one, your guidelines are, you know, don't exaggerate the tribute, and this is because if you exaggerate it too much, it can come off as, you know, being too over the top. You might embarrass the person, and that's something that you don't want to do because you're paying tribute to them. And you also want to make sure that you focus on the person being honored, which sounds self-explanatory, but sometimes, you know, you do need to include things that might involve you, and that's okay as long as the focus remains on the person that you're paying tribute to. So, for instance, when I did a eulogy for my grandma, I did talk about myself because, you know, my experiences with my grandma obviously involved me because I was there. I was a person, or I am a person. But they were things that I, you know, either did because of her, or they were memories that were very special to me that involved her. And so while, yes, I did talk about myself, I kept her at the center of the story. So, for example, I did, you know, I talked about one time when I was like stuck in this crazy snowstorm and I had to dig my way out. And all I had was this like really tiny plastic shovel. It was kind of ridiculous. Should have had a regular shovel because I was living up north. And there was nobody who could come help me, nothing. And I just really wanted to give up, but I didn't because that's not what my grandma would do. And so, yeah, that story is about me and a shovel and, you know, like trying to get my car out of, you know, umpteen inches of snow, and like clear the driveway, or not the driveway, the sidewalk of all of these like 11 to 14 inches of snow. But I didn't do it because I wanted to do it. I did it because I had to do it, and then I knew this because of my grandma, basically, and kind of that was the driving force. So it was really about her. The other thing you want to do is create vivid images of accomplishment. So tell very detailed stories about that person, and their achievements. the other thing you want to do is be sincere. You don't want to come off as condescending or anything. And then in terms of magnification, generally speaking, you're going to endorse values of individual responsibility, striving, achievement. So again, with the eulogy for my grandma, individual responsibility, independence, those are the values that I kind of played up because they were important to her and they were things that the people that knew her recognized. So again, it just depends on how you want to go about doing things and who your audience is and what your purpose is. So the next type of tribute speech is a eulogy. It is a speech presented upon a person's death. Before I get too much into it, I want you guys to see an actual example. It's not a typical eulogy, but it is nonetheless a pretty good example. So here it is. So I'm assuming that you have watched the video, and while it is not a typical eulogy, it is a great example of a eulogy nonetheless. So it does follow the guidelines. What Stephen Colbert does is, I imagine that if his family were watching that, he would offer comfort to the living. In any eulogy, you do not want to focus on the pain and the loss. You are there to, in some ways, you're there to make people feel better. And yes, it's hard, but the point of the eulogy is to pay tribute to that person, and you want to focus on the good. And the way to go about doing that is, first, you do want to create a sense of identification. So share stories. And the story should, highlight the humanity of the person, and gentle humor is completely fine. I think back to the eulogy I presented, and I look at the one that Stephen Colbert presented, and it had its funny moments, and that in and of itself is comforting. Laughing is very helpful. And if you think about, your relationship to the speaker, or if you're the speaker in your relationship to the audience, this example that I've shown you is helpful because I feel like even though I will never ever meet Stephen Colbert, I do kind of identify with him in this situation. So, for example, he talks about, his mom, teaching him these stage falls and kind of all of these things were encouraged. And for me, personally, that reminds me of my mom in that I was kind of told to kind of follow my dreams, I could do whatever I wanted. And so that kind of whimsy that he had with his mom in some way kind of reminds me of, growing up with my mom, because I could go be an actress, I could go be an astronaut, I could do whatever I want. And the other way that I do identify is when he talks about his mother's favorite prayer. I don't attend church with my mother anymore, but for whatever reason, I have this very distinct connection to the Lord's Prayer, because when I was growing up with my mom, she took me to church every Sunday, and near the end of every service, which as a kid, I was looking forward to, whenever the Lord's Prayer came, I was like, oh, we get to go get donuts soon. But now that I'm older, I look back on that, and it's something that, I don't know, I kind of remember fondly. And so I have a connection to Stephen Colbert, and that he has this kind of connection to a specific prayer with his mother, and so do I. And so that's kind of where the identification comes in. Now, in terms of magnification with eulogies, you want to focus on the meaning of the person's life for those who live on. And depending on who the person is going to depend on what that means. For Stephen Colbert, if you guys didn't pick up on it, it was, you know, about family and working hard and just keep going. And that's because you can get that from the part where he was talking about when he had to leave and his mom said that was okay, that she wouldn't miss it for the world. And so, first of all, let me just apologize. I really struggle with chapter 16 because of the eulogy I delivered. It's hard for me to do. So that actually leads me into my warning. If you decide to do a eulogy, please, please, please be careful, because I kind of want to cry right now. And this is not something that should make you feel weird. Like I would tell you guys if I was in class with you right now. Eulogies are just difficult to do, and I'm a speech teacher who struggled with chapter 16, and I'm struggling with it even though I am doing this with you guys not in the room. So, if you feel like you have to do a eulogy, that is okay, as long as you know you can get through it. Maybe it's something that you couldn't do in the past, and you need to do that in class for your speech. And that's fine. Just, you know, I want to make sure that you guys can actually finish your speech. So, again, my apologies. Things should be a little bit easier now that we're getting past the eulogy slide. So, moving on. Alright, so the next type of tribute speech, or subtype of a tribute speech, is a toast. You guys probably think of like a wedding toast or something like that, which is a very standard one, but sometimes these are offered at celebration dinners or meetings. You could just be enjoying the moment, and you're just going to offer kind of a blessing for the future. It could just be you're having a good time. Now, in terms of guidelines for a toast, they are typically memorized. However, if I were to deliver a toast, I would not memorize my toast. I would probably go manuscript style and make sure that I had enough practice so that I did not have to look at my paper very often. You might go extemporaneous. This one, to me, is really up to you. The majority of these speeches actually are going to be up to you in terms of delivery. For most of them, I would probably do manuscript. And this is definitely one of them. So, memorize, manuscript, extemporaneous, it's kind of up to you. I recommend manuscript with lots of practice. Now, in terms of humor, again, humor is okay, but you don't want to go over the top, especially, you know, depending upon the situation. So, for instance, I was supposed to give a wedding toast one time, and I had to be very careful because my friends' in-laws were very, very strict and traditional, and so I had to kind of keep that in mind when I was thinking about what I was going to say, because there are certain things that her family might not necessarily be bothered by or embarrassed by, or she wouldn't be embarrassed that her family would hear about, but her in-laws, especially because they were strict, there are things that might lead to problems and humiliation down the road. So you just have to be careful. Just, you know, a touch of appropriate humor. Now, in terms of your techniques, you're going to probably use magnification and identification, and these are just going to be developed the way that you would develop them in a speech of tribute or a eulogy. Just go about it in very much the same way. The final subtype of a tribute speech is your award presentation, and this is just a speech that recognizes the achievements of the award recipient. You want to make sure that you explain the nature of the award and why this person qualifies for the award. So, in terms of guidelines, with magnification, you want to emphasize the uniqueness of the person, maybe the superiority, kind of the benefits of the recipient's achievements. So, I usually think of the award speeches at like the Oscars or something like that, like the Lifetime Achievement Awards, because they always talk about what this person's done and how it's actually benefited society or how it's benefited the filmmaking community. stuff like that. You also want to provide examples that illustrate these accomplishments. And again, you can think of the award shows because oftentimes they'll show clips from things, or with the Lifetime Achievement Award, they're going to go into much more detail and they will kind of tell you what this person's done and give a lot of examples, details, and will explain their meaning as well. Now, this is usually paired with the acceptance speech, but I've housed it here under the tribute area because it is technically a speech of tribute. But know that for your assignment, if you do an award presentation, you have to have a partner so that you can do both of them because they go together. So be aware of that. So this next speech is a speech of inspiration, and it's just a ceremonial speech directed at awakening or reawakening an audience's goal, purpose, or set of values. I've got an example for you guys to watch, and then we will go ahead and cover the guidelines.
Why do I stand up here? Anybody?
To feel taller.
No. Thank you for playing, Mr. Dalton. I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. See, the world looks very different from up here. You don't believe me? Come see for yourselves. Come on. Come on. Just when you think you know something, you have to look at it in another way. Even though it may seem silly or wrong, you must try. Now, when you read, don't just consider what the author thinks. Consider what you think. Boys, you must strive to find your own voice. Because the longer you wait to begin, the less likely you are to find it at all. Thoreau said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Don't be resigned to that. Break out. Don't just walk off the edge like lemmings. Look around you. There you go, Mr. Christie. Thank you. Yes. Dare to strike out and find new ground.
So that was an example from a movie called The Dead Poets Society. And just to give you a little bit of background, it's about an all-boys school, and Robin Williams' character, he used to go there, but he's kind of this teacher who doesn't want to do what the school wants him to do in terms of his teaching methods. He's a little outside of the box. And what he's doing in this scene is reawakening kind of that same feeling in his students. He doesn't want them to just kind of toe the line or, stay inside their comfort zone. He wants them to think outside the box, and he wants them to enjoy their education. And so in this, he is very enthusiastic, which is one of the guidelines. If you can't be enthusiastic, don't give an inspirational speech because it is very difficult to be inspiring if you lack enthusiasm. And then in terms of identification, you want to draw on past successes, perhaps frustrations, and this can encourage future accomplishment. And then you can also, it's kind of like renewing group commitment, but you're going to revitalize appreciation for beliefs or values, which is what Robin Williams was trying to do for these students of his, which is why he, had them stand up on the desk and kind of give them a different perspective. And he just talked about things that they could probably identify with. And he also used his language too, which is very important for a speech of inspiration. Now, does yours have to be like his? No. Speeches of inspiration are incredibly different. They're just all across the board. They can be religious, they can be commercial, they can be political, they can be social. And here, you guys can do a silly inspirational speech. You can inspire anyone to do anything, so you can give a speech that inspires people about pretty much anything. But the main thing to remember is that if you want to do this, you need to be enthusiastic. I cannot stress that enough. Alright, our last speech, acceptance speech. So this is a ceremonial speech where you express gratitude for some honor or award that you've been given, and you want to make sure you acknowledge the people who made that possible. So, in terms of guidelines, again, express gratitude for the honor and the people that helped get you there. Make sure you're humble. Don't be kind of snooty and like, yes, I totally deserve this award. You also want to use language that matches the dignity of the occasion. So, if you are accepting a very serious award, you probably want to kind of maintain that seriousness. So, one example that happened, I think it was last year, it was the Oscars, and people thought Matthew McConaughey was absolutely crazy, but other people thought he just knocked his acceptance speech out of the park. And he didn't really match his language to. He talked about like making chili or something. Like you guys can go to YouTube. I'm not gonna make you guys watch it unless you want to, but it kind of worked because he's Matthew McConaughey, so he kind of stayed within who he was. But if you're not Matthew McConaughey, you probably just want to stay serious if it's a serious thing. Now, if you're getting an award and it's not the most serious thing in the world, like, yeah, go ahead, be goofy. Like, that's okay. Like, you're getting a funny award. Like, if you're gonna get, what do they call them, a Razzie? Like, have some fun with that. I mean, they're giving you a Razzie for crying out loud. And if you don't know what a Razzie is, that's something you'll have to Google. It's kind of like the opposite of the Oscars. Now, in terms of identification, you want to focus on the values of the award that the award represents. So, this can be hard to do sometimes, depending on the situation and how much time you have. But one example would be, again, the Oscars last year. The woman who was in 12 Years a Slave, she won. Her first name is Lupita. Her last name is escaping me right now. But she kind of talked about, aspiring to do this, and she never thought she would be there. And to me, that is kind of a value that award represents. Some people may beg to differ, but I think that kind of talking about being grateful for just being able to have the education and become an actress kind of goes along with the Oscar acceptance speech. So, again, you guys can look that one up if you want. It should still be on YouTube. So, that is chapter 16. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me, and have a wonderful rest of the week. And I look forward to seeing your speeches on Monday and Tuesday.